Taiwan is a green mountain island facing one of Asia's largest coasts. That sounds unremarkable until you look at the map. Across a narrow strait sits China, a vast continental power. Beyond Taiwan lie the Pacific Ocean, Japan, Southeast Asia, and distant America. So Taiwan is small, but it blocks a very large doorway. For centuries, empires kept noticing that doorway. Some wanted trade, some wanted security, some wanted prestige. Others simply feared that rivals might get there first. That is why Taiwan became more than an island. It became a prize, a fortress, a frontier, and a warning. And the strange part is this: Taiwan spent much of history outside imperial control. It was close enough to empires to matter, yet difficult enough to resist them. So how did a mountainous island become central to modern geopolitics? The answer begins with geography, because geography set the trap. Taiwan rises sharply from the sea. A rugged mountain spine divides much of the island. Its western plains face the Taiwan Strait and mainland China. Its eastern coast faces the deep Pacific, with fewer easy landing places. That meant early outsiders usually approached from the west. They found fertile land, forests, rivers, and sheltered harbors. But they also found communities who already lived there. For thousands of years, Austronesian-speaking peoples developed cultures across Taiwan. Their ancestors were part of a much larger maritime story. From islands near Taiwan, Austronesian languages eventually spread across the Pacific. They reached the Philippines, Indonesia, Polynesia, and even Madagascar. Taiwan was not an empty edge of China. It was a major crossroads in the history of ocean travel. Still, nearby Chinese empires often looked elsewhere. The mainland had enormous rivers, farming regions, and dangerous northern frontiers. Taiwan looked distant, humid, mountainous, and inconvenient. The strait was not always a moat, but storms, currents, and piracy made crossing unpredictable. For officials in Beijing, Taiwan could seem more troublesome than profitable. For smugglers, though, that inconvenience was perfect. Chinese fishers, traders, farmers, and pirates crossed the strait for centuries. They traded deer hides, salt, rice, sugar, and other goods. Some settled permanently on the western plains. Others came seasonally, then disappeared back across the water. This created a familiar imperial problem. The state claimed distant waters, but local people ignored the state whenever profit appeared. Taiwan became a zone of contact without firm control. Then Europe arrived, carrying cannons, companies, and a terrible talent for maps. In the early 17th century, Dutch ships entered Asian waters. The Dutch East India Company wanted Asian trade. It wanted Chinese silk, Japanese silver, spices, and strategic ports. Taiwan suddenly looked extremely useful. It sat between China, Japan, and Southeast Asia. It had harbors where ships could rest and reload, and it stood close to Chinese markets without being ruled by China. That last part mattered enormously. The Dutch built a fortified base in southern Taiwan. From there, they turned the island into a commercial machine. They encouraged Chinese migration for farming. They traded with indigenous communities. They exported deer products, sugar, rice, and other valuable goods. Taiwan was no longer merely a distant island. It became a small engine connected to giant markets. But the Dutch had a weakness. They controlled forts and ports. They did not control every mountain, village, or coastline, and they depended on trade networks they could not fully command. Spain noticed the same opportunity. Spanish forces established positions in northern Taiwan. They hoped to protect routes linked to the Philippines. For a brief moment, Taiwan hosted competing European empires: Dutch power in the south, Spanish power in the north. Chinese merchants moving between both. Indigenous peoples navigating a dangerous new world. It was not yet modern Taiwan, but the island had become strategically visible. Then the Europeans discovered an old rule of history. A fortress is useful only while someone stronger stays away. In the middle of the 17th century, China exploded into civil war. The Ming dynasty collapsed. The Qing dynasty advanced from the north. Loyalists, generals, pirates, refugees, and merchants searched for survival. One man saw Taiwan as his escape route. His name was Zheng Chenggong, better known in the West as Qixinga. He was a Ming loyalist with a powerful maritime army. He needed a secure base against the advancing Qing. Taiwan offered land, food, ports, and distance from Qing armies. So Qixinga crossed the strait and attacked the Dutch. After a hard siege, the Dutch surrendered. Their colonial experiment ended. Taiwan had changed hands again. But this was not simply one empire replacing another. Qixinga turned Taiwan into a military refuge. He wanted to rebuild power and eventually recover the mainland. That dream did not last, yet it changed the island's future. More Chinese settlers arrived. Farming expanded across the western plains. Taiwan became tied more tightly to mainland politics. The Qing dynasty eventually defeated Qixinga's successors. In the late 17th century, Taiwan entered Qing imperial control. Even then, Qing officials were cautious. They feared migration, rebellion, piracy, and expensive administration. Taiwan was useful, but it was also unruly. The empire tried to regulate movement across the strait. That did not work very well. People kept coming anyway. Farmers wanted land, merchants wanted profit, officials wanted taxes. And every new settlement pushed older communities further into danger. The Western Plains changed fastest. Chinese-speaking farming society expanded across fertile lowlands. Indigenous peoples faced land loss, conflict, and forced adaptation. Meanwhile, the mountains remained difficult for imperial authority. Taiwan became a frontier inside an empire. That frontier kept producing trouble. Local disputes could become armed uprisings. Secret societies flourished. Officials complained about bandits, settlers, and impossible terrain. A saying emerged about Taiwan's frequent rebellions. Every few years, someone rebelled. The exact rhythm varied, of course, but the frustration was real. The Qing wanted Taiwan quiet. Taiwan kept reminding the Qing that maps are easier than governing. Then, foreign powers returned. This time, they came with modern warships and global ambitions. During the 19th century, European empires pressured Qing China. Ports opened under unequal treaties. Foreign merchants gained new access. Taiwan became more valuable because coastal security now mattered more. Its ports faced sea lanes linking China and Japan. Its position could threaten southern China. Its resources could support naval power. Foreign expeditions tested Qing control. American forces attacked after a dispute involving shipwreck survivors. Japanese forces later landed in southern Taiwan. These episodes exposed an uncomfortable reality. The Qing claimed Taiwan. But claiming an island was not the same as defending it. Japan understood that lesson especially well. Japan was modernizing rapidly. It wanted security, markets, resources, and influence. Taiwan sat directly along Japan's southern approaches. It also stood near the route toward Southeast Asia. For Japanese strategists, Taiwan looked like a forward platform. For Qing officials, it had become impossible to ignore. Taiwan was upgraded into a full province. That was a major change. The Qing finally treated the island as more than a troublesome frontier. Roads, defenses, and administration expanded. But history gave the Qing little time. War came between China and Japan. Japan won decisively. Under the treaty that followed, Qing China ceded Taiwan to Japan. The island's imperial ruler changed again. For many people in Taiwan, this was not an abstract map adjustment. It meant a new government, new laws, new schools, and new coercion. Japan ruled Taiwan for 5 decades. Its colonial administration built railways, ports, hospitals, schools, and industries. It also imposed political control and suppressed resistance. Both realities existed together. Modern infrastructure did not erase colonial domination, nor did development make rule by an outside empire voluntary. Japan saw Taiwan as more than territory. It was a laboratory for colonial administration. It was a source of sugar, rice, timber, and later industrial production. It was also a military stepping stone. From Taiwan, Japan could project power toward China and Southeast Asia. The island's location had become even more important. Then came the Pacific War. Japan used Taiwan as a strategic base. Allied bombing hit military and industrial targets. The island was pulled into a conflict far larger than itself. When Japan surrendered, its rule over Taiwan ended. The Republic of China took control of the island. For a moment, the future seemed straightforward. Taiwan would be governed from China again. Then China entered another civil war. The Nationalists and Communists fought for control of the mainland. By the late 1940s, communist forces had prevailed. The People's Republic of China was established on the mainland. The Republic of China government retreated to Taiwan. Suddenly, Taiwan was not just an island beside China. It became the last major territory controlled by the defeated nationalist government. This created a political problem with no easy map solution. 2 governments claimed to represent China. One ruled the mainland. The other ruled Taiwan and nearby islands. Each saw the other as temporary. Each expected history to finish the argument. History had other plans. The Cold War transformed Taiwan's importance again. At first, American policy seemed uncertain. Then war broke out on the Korean Peninsula. Washington feared a wider conflict in East Asia. Taiwan now appeared inside a larger defensive chain. Japan, Okinawa, Taiwan, the Philippines, and other positions formed a barrier. This was often called the First Island Chain. The phrase sounds technical. Its meaning was simple. Control of islands could shape access to the Pacific. For the United States, Taiwan mattered strategically. For the Republic of China, American support became essential. For the People's Republic of China, Taiwan became an unfinished Civil War issue. And for people living on Taiwan, the island became heavily militarized. For decades, Taiwan lived under martial law. The government feared invasion, espionage, and internal opposition. Political repression shaped everyday life, but Taiwan's economy was changing quickly. Land reform, education, exports, and industrial policy fueled growth. Factories produced textiles, electronics, machinery, and components. Taiwan became wealthier, more urban, and more connected. Then, another transformation began. Taiwan moved toward democracy. Martial law ended in the late 1980s. Political parties competed more openly. Elections became central to public life. A society once governed under emergency rule became a democracy. That shift changed the Taiwan question again. The island was no longer only a military refuge. It was home to a distinct political system. It had its own elections, institutions, media, and public debates. Yet its international status remained unusually complicated. Most countries recognized the People's Republic of China as China. Many still maintained unofficial ties with Taiwan. Taiwan had trade relationships, cultural links, and practical partnerships worldwide. But formal diplomacy came with strict limits. This is where the map becomes especially strange. Taiwan functions as a self-governing democracy. China considers it part of its territory. The United States maintains unofficial relations while opposing unilateral changes by force. Other countries navigate carefully around recognition, trade, security, and Beijing's position. Nobody wants an accidental crisis, yet everyone knows the island matters. Why does it matter so much now? Partly because of geography. Taiwan sits near major shipping routes. Large volumes of global trade move through nearby waters. A conflict could disrupt shipping, insurance, supply chains, and regional economies. Partly because of military geography. Taiwan lies between China and the open Pacific. Control of the island could affect naval movement. It could also affect nearby Japan and the Philippines. But there is another reason. Tiny pieces of silicon made Taiwan globally indispensable. Taiwan became a leading producer of advanced semiconductors. These chips power phones, cars, servers, medical equipment, and military systems. They are not glamorous, they are microscopic, but modern economies cannot function without them. That gave Taiwan a new kind of strategic weight. In earlier centuries, empires wanted its harbors and farmland. Later, they wanted its military position. Now, the world also depends on its industrial capability. An island, once valued for deer hides and sugar, became vital to digital civilization. That is history's favorite kind of irony. The same geography keeps returning with different costumes. Sailing ships became steamships. Steamships became aircraft carriers. Factories became semiconductor fabs. But Taiwan remained close to powerful neighbors and major sea lanes. It remained difficult to ignore. Still, Taiwan is not important only because others want it. That framing misses the people who live there. Taiwan's history includes indigenous communities, migrants, colonizers, soldiers, workers, dissidents, and voters. They were not merely pieces on imperial chessboards. They built families, businesses, languages, memories, and political institutions. They adapted to forces arriving from every direction. Sometimes they resisted. Sometimes they negotiated. Sometimes they had no good options at all. That is why Taiwan's story cannot be reduced to one simple claim. It is a story of overlapping histories. Chinese history is part of it. Japanese colonial history is part of it. Indigenous history is part of it. Cold War history is part of it. Democratic history is part of it. Global technology history is part of it. And all those layers sit on one mountainous island. So why did every empire want Taiwan? Because it sits where mainland Asia meets the Pacific. Because it commands approaches to important sea routes. Because it offered fertile land, ports, and strategic depth. Because rivals feared letting other rivals control it. And because every new age found a new reason to care. The Dutch saw a trading station. Qing saw a refuge. The Qing saw a difficult frontier. Japan saw a colony and military platform. Cold War powers saw a strategic barrier. The modern world sees a democracy, a security flashpoint, and a semiconductor powerhouse. Taiwan did not become important overnight. It became important repeatedly. Every empire arrived with its own plan, and every plan was shaped by the same stubborn reality. The island is small on the map, but it sits in exactly the wrong place to be ignored.